Welcome to the second morning session, Saturday of our 2011 Winemaker Conference. This session is troubleshooting off odors, off flavors, and off colors with Allison Crow. Allison Crow has led a secret double life since 1998 as a professional winemaker by day and our wine wizard by night. She's answered hundreds of winemaking questions from readers over the years, and a collection of her columns was released as the Winemaker's Answer Book. Allison earned an enology degree from University of California at Davis before winemaking stints at Byington Winery, Bonnie Duke Vineyards, as well as Bodega Salatin in Argentina. She's currently a Napa-based winemaker for Plato Wine Partners with a collection of vineyards around California. You'll be able to see her later in the Q&A section for lunch, but this session is entitled Troubleshooting Off Odors, Off Flavors, and Off Colors. Please help me welcome Allison Crow.
Thank you, Chris. I also have one introduction to make. This is son of wine wizard. This is William. He was born December 23rd this year. So I also want to put a thank you to my editors at Winemaker Magazine who let me have a little bit of an extension on getting this presentation together when I was trying to learn how to be a new mom. So he's my first baby, and Grandma and Grandpa live very close here in town, so they decided to come and help me out with this. So I was able to bring him. So this is William, and this is his first conference. All right, are you guys having a good time? Good. I have to give you a little trivia about this area and about this room. I grew up in a little surf town called Carpinteria, just about 8 to 10 miles down the road here. And I actually went to one of my proms in high school here at this hotel. Quite a few years ago. I won't tell you how many, but out in the rotunda where we're having lunch, at one point, that's where we were dancing the night away. So it's a good location. And yeah, so I grew up here. It's a fabulous area, just a little bit hop, skip, and a jump from one of California, really the world's best wine countries. I hear that our friend Wes has been treating you guys to some of the local wines and winemakers. He's a great ambassador for the area, so I couldn't be more pleased to help show it off a little bit, my backyard, so welcome. Like Chris said, today we're going to talk about off odors, off aromas, off colors, basically off character. And, I guess in the throes of new motherhood, I was just thinking about, feeling a little strange myself, so I was thinking, yeah, off odors, when you're strange. Oops, I'm not advancing. Be great if I could move my slides forward. There we go. This is one of my favorite bands. One of my favorite songs. Because winemaking is strange sometimes, let's be honest. Sometimes we have to open the doors of perception. We have to touch, we have to smell, we have to feel. Thanks, Joan. But there is some good news about off character. The fact that sometimes, in my wine wizard column, I tear my hair and gnash my teeth. It's like, oh gosh, another fill of yeast, another high VA, another high pH. But you talk to professional winemakers in Napa or France or Australia, and sometimes there's a little secret here that there's a silver lining with some off characters, that sometimes they can actually a little bit can be a good thing. We'll talk more about that as we go, but the good news is that it's all relative. A lot of these compounds, which are aromatic compounds or compounds that you taste, there's some off characters, of course, that are visual, like oxidation. But a lot of them are actually maybe kind of okay and maybe kind of interesting in very small amounts. So I'm not trying to say that you should try to achieve these in your wines. I'm just saying that it is truly all relative. What is one winemaker's flaw is another winemaker's fabulous. So here's a little, bifurcation of the flaws here, that the things on the left are usually considered defects, and if they are perceptible in a wine competition, if you send your wine in to the critics, if it's really perceptible, it's going to be, ooh, something went wrong here. I mean, because basically, if you're a wine judge or a critic or even a self-examining winemaker, let's say, which you all should be. We all try to be. Sometimes we get a little partial to our own wines, but we all would say, okay, sulfide, which is kind of that rotten egg smell. The top two are kind of the rotten egg, burnt onion. We'll go over all these in more detail, of course, coming up. But if you smell that rotten egg smell, it's like, ooh, something went wrong here. Disulfide, same thing. Stuck fermentation is when you've got a lot of gassiness, turbidity, or you've got a lot of, obviously, residual sugar in your wine. The yeast just could not chew through that sugar, and you've got a stuck fermentation. That's a definite flaw, because unless you're making a 10% residual sugar dessert wine, you probably didn't want that to happen. Oxidation is visual browning of a white or a red. A white is very obvious. Red is, it gets that brick color. Ethyl acetate. CO2 is carbon dioxide. If you're going for a still red wine style and it's spritzy, you got a problem. TCA stands for trichloroanisole. That's that corked defect that sometimes we talk about. It can come from cork, it can come from other sources. We'll get into those later. So those are usually considered, even if you smell them at low levels or with the stuck fermentation, if you really didn't intend it to be sweet, then that's a problem. The ones on the right, and it's a bit of a gray area, and it's up to the winemaker's judgment. Brettanomyces is a yeast that sometimes it just kind of hangs out in the winery cellars. If it gets out of control, it can start to take over the aromas of many of the wines in the winery, and that's not a good thing. But a little bit sometimes, especially if you're drinking wines from, let's say, France, it's a very typical aromatic characteristic. At high levels, it can smell like Band-Aid, but at low levels, it just kind of adds to what they call maybe the French funk, or the terroir, sometimes people would call it, or terroir, I should say. Residual sugar. This one is interesting. At a very low level, a little bit of residual sugar can contribute to mouthfeel and body. But if you're a Winemaker column reader, you know that I always encourage you to go dry, because what you're doing is if you don't ferment to dry, which means no fermentable sugar left, that you're going to possibly have re-fermentation when you don't want it, like in the bottle. And that's definitely a flaw. Volatile acidity, again, that's a big gray area. I make wines from all over the state of California, from beautiful Santa Barbara County all the way up to Mendocino County in the north, hitting a real wide swath of Napa and Sonoma. And my wines, they vary widely. And it's not by necessarily design. A lot of wines will just kind of go to one VA or another. It depends a lot on the microbial flora that you have living in the cellar. You'll see that really contributes to the levels of VA. But a little bit, especially in reds, can kind of be okay. CO2, that's another big one, wide swings. I make sure I bottle my reds with a parts per million or milligrams per liter of dissolved CO2 less than 500. But, sometimes 500 to 700, if it's a white wine, can give it a little bit of a lift. And even home winemakers can measure or get kind of an idea of our dissolved CO2 levels. There's a little instrument called a carbodoser, which is essentially it's like a graduated cylinder that you can shake up. And then it's kind of clever that any extra wine kind of comes out the top of the spout due to pressure that you've released, and it gives you an idea of what kind of dissolved CO2 you're talking about. In my wineries where I work, we measure it in other ways, but carbodosers are relatively inexpensive and accessible to those of us making some really small lots. Oxidation, generally a flaw, unless you're going for that style like sherry. Sherry is a beautiful, beautiful oxidized wine, and you actually want to deliberately encourage those film yeasts to grow on top of your wine, and they really, you can't have sherry without oxidation. So in the case of sherry, it's a good thing. So yeah, it's I always love to think that I could give you guys all the black and white and make it real cut and dry and easy, but with these off characters, usually they're bad, but sometimes they can be okay in small amounts. So, and that's where the art and the science come together, but also come apart. A number might tell you one thing, like, if I always tell you to keep your pH below 3.7, or your VA is below, 0.65 or something like that, and maybe your VA on your Cabernet is 0.75, that might be okay. It might work for you. So again, total gray areas, but that's kind of the fun and the madness that is wine. So the reason that I chose this topic, off character, today, was because when I, in the course of writing for the Winemaker column, the majority of the questions they tend to be about these. And, we get your letters in, and I love reading your letters, and again, just, another plus. Thank you to all of you for writing to me over the years. By the way, it's been great to keep that conversation open. I really enjoy responding. But most of the questions tend to be about these off characters, like, I'm smelling this, what did I do wrong, what can I do to help prevent it? So I said, okay, I'm coming to speak to, a big group of these folks. What can I send them home with that's really going to help them make better wine in the long run? Now, before we launch into our friend VA here, and its ugly chemical symbol up there, I could have gotten more ugly and done little tinker toy drawings, but I didn't want to go that crazy because that's no use to anybody. Don't get overwhelmed by the jargon, chemical symbols here. Really try, if you're not a chemistry person, or if this is maybe you've only done a couple batches or a couple of harvests, don't get put off by a lot of the terms that are going to be up here on the screen today. The handouts are really, I made them to kind of be like a little mini book for you to take home. And so those of you that have experience, that you're not put off by these terms, it can be a nice reference for you. For those of you that maybe are seeing some of these things for the first time, it's a great place to start your research. There is a million great websites all over the internet. Winemaker Magazine website, of course, is a fabulous place to start. I have to give a plug for my fellow authors and for the editor, Brad. He's put together a really top-notch professional group of folks that will give you guys the straight information. Also, lots of universities are great places to get data. UC Davis has a really nice one coming out soon, so watch for that. Cornell is good. Also, a lot of smaller state universities have winemaking programs, so don't neglect the areas that the programs in your